Hi everyone, Patricia Calkins here. Today I would like to talk about immigration and acculturation, which would be the process of joining a new culture. There are a couple of terms that we need to first talk about. So the first term is enculturation. Enculturation is the process by which an individual learns about his or her own culture. So it's a process that everybody goes through when they are born into a culture. That child has to learn that culture and will adopt that culture. The child will then be accepted as a fully functioning member of the culture. It is impossible to not become enculturated. It is necessary for you to survive to become enculturated. Enculturation generally happens within the family. So we have over here a picture of what looks like it could be a grandfather and a granddaughter doing the sorts of things that families do together. This is the way that enculturation happens. Another main way that enculturation happens is through the process by which the child learns its first or home language. As we have seen, the connection of language and culture is very close, and so the learning of that first language is a major way of enculturation. Another major force in enculturation is education. The values of the dominant culture of society are usually expressed through the educational system. And so education becomes a major force in enculturation. Acculturation is the process of cultural and psychological change following contact between cultural groups and their individual members. So, acculturation takes place within individuals from cultural groups that have contact with each other. It takes place in both of the groups and in all the individuals in contact. Usually, one group is going to be dominant over the others, but if you want to have successful acculturation, there has to be mutual accommodation among all groups and individuals. So we cannot have successful acculturation if one group simply demands that another group become just like it, or if the dominant group refuses to consider any changes to itself as it has come in contact with another group. Remember that acculturation leads to changes in cultural practices and could lead to changes in cultural perspectives. The If the cultures are quite different, especially in the cultural perspectives, acculturation becomes very difficult. Acculturation also does not necessarily lead to acceptance as a full member of the in-group. You can become acculturated and still be seen, at least partially, as an outsider or completely as an outsider for reasons that have nothing to do with whether you have accepted the uh, perspectives of the culture to which you are coming. So if you think about how acculturation and enculturation differ, think about the difference between a baby who is born into a culture, a 5-year-old who comes from another culture and joins a new culture, a 35-year-old adapting to that new culture, and a 65-year-old adapting to that new culture. The process is, of course, going to be different for each one of these people. And so we want to look actually at some of the differences between acculturation and enculturation. We're not going to go through all of these differences here, but we'll highlight a few of them. Feel free to stop this video and read this table here so that you can get more information about the differences between acculturation and enculturation. Um, Acculturation is a process of learning and adopting from the other's culture, whereas, as we said, enculturation is my own culture. In the process of acculturation, my culture becomes subsumed by the other. So we're assuming that the culture that I am moving to. So additional differences are acculturation usually doesn't provide the acceptance and distinct identity as a fully functioning member of the in-group, whereas enculturation is the process by which you become a fully accepted member of the in-group. Acculturation usually also has a motive or a goal. There's a good reason to join the dominant culture and to give up some or part of or all of your home culture. Um, Joining the dominant culture gives you advantages, whereas enculturation is how you join that dominant culture when you are born. Um, Acculturation is necessary for better adaptation to a foreign surrounding. Uh, it's enculturation teaches the individual about what the expectations are in the culture in which he or she lives. And then finally, acculturation is common if you're not in your homeland. So if you're a refugee, if you're a migrant, or if you're an immigrant. Enculturation can best be seen when children try their best to follow the culture and do it through learning, observing, education, learning the language, and contact with adults who have already embraced that culture. Acculturation is a consequence of immigration. It is impossible not to become at least partially acculturated if you immigrate. It's the process of aligning yourself with the culture you are going to join, and it may begin before you immigrate. So, this is especially true if your immigration is planned, if it is orderly, and it is well financed. So, if you are coming from Europe and you have decided that you are going to join American culture, let's say that you're going to study in the United States, you will learn about the United States before you come here. Um, that's an easy thing for you to do. However, if you are coming here because you are a refugee, you're not going to be able to prepare for immigration as well as a person who has planned an orderly and well financed immigration. The process of acculturation is also going to be much faster if the home culture and the host culture share a language. Now, when we talk about the experience of immigration or migration, a migration experience is when somebody moves from one culture to another with the intention of going back to that original culture. That's migration. Immigration is when a person intends to stay in the new culture. We can talk about pre-migration. Many immigrants in their home countries are living in poverty or violent areas, or they may be politically repressed. So their daily life shapes their expectations of the new culture. They expect the new culture to be better and to be better in certain ways. So it becomes idealized. Some immigrants may also be traumatized by the experiences in their home culture, and this trauma, the effects of it, will linger even after they join the new culture. Many immigrants have only felt secure and emotionally supported within their families. If they are politically repressed or if they live in violent areas, the only place that they have to feel safe is within their families. But leaving the culture for a new one means leaving your family members behind. That creates, of course, great anxiety. Other immigrants may come from the middle class or upper class backgrounds, but maybe moving again for political reasons or for reasons of violence. And moving to a new culture means that there will be a step downwards in the status of these people. So some immigrants, when they come here, expect their lives to be worth, at least for a while, leave of family and friends. Um, we're leaving a world that we knew and that we valued, and we're heading off into the unknown. It could be extremely dangerous in our travel to the new place. And this may add to the trauma that I already experienced in my home culture. Coming to the US may also be difficult, but it could also be easy depending on the circumstances. However, interaction with authorities is always a daunting prospect. Finally, we have the experience of post-migration. This is when the new immigrant is suddenly confronted with the reality of immigration, with the real life of immigration and living in the new culture. Many people are disappointed with the opportunities that are open to them to realize their dreams. It doesn't mean that they're going to give up their dreams. It just means that those dreams are going to be harder to reach than they had thought that they might be. Living in the new culture might require adherence to values that are in conflict with the values of the home culture. And as we have said many times before, changes of perspectives are very hard to make, and values are perspectives. Immigrants are often required to learn a new language, and they may face stereotypes and discrimination. They may no longer be seen as individuals, but as representatives of their ethnic group. This is what was meant when we were saying if you become acculturated, that is not necessarily the case that you are accepted as a fully functioning member of the in group. And finally, if you entered a country without a valid visa, you overstayed a visa, you have a problem in the asylum process, it's often not a good idea to call attention to yourself. So you are often isolated, you are often scared, you are often having these emotional stresses added to the already difficult process of acculturation after immigration. So immigration and acculturation may be much more difficult than many people realize. Acculturation requires not only changes in products and practices, but in perspectives as well. And we have to remember that changes in perspectives are especially difficult and disruptive to individual well-being to make. So that's a basic introduction to acculturation and immigration. We'll have one more of these videos later in this week's lessons. Um, thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.